the betrayal that built an empire. They say trust is the foundation of every great partnership. But what happens when that foundation crumbles beneath your feet? This is the story of Marcus Chun, a man who built everything from nothing, only to watch his closest friend destroy it all. Or so he thought, because sometimes the greatest betrayals lead to the most unexpected triumphs. Our story begins in a cramped garage in Seattle, where Marcus Chun and David Sullivan were hunched over a makeshift workbench, surrounded by circuit boards and empty coffee cups. It was 2008, the economy was crashing around them, and these two college dropouts were convinced they had an idea that would change everything. Marcus was the visionary, the one who saw possibilities where others saw obstacles. David was the executor, the man who could turn dreams into reality. Together, they were unstoppable. They called their company Zenith Technologies, and their goal was simple yet ambitious: to revolutionize how businesses manage their data in the cloud. For 3 years, they lived on ramen noodles and hope. Marcus would pitch their product to anyone who would listen, often sleeping in his car between meetings to save money on hotels. David would code through the night, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he built the infrastructure that would support their vision. They were brothers in arms, united by a dream that kept them going when their bank accounts hit zero. Then, in 2011, everything changed. A major retailer signed on as their first enterprise client. The deal was worth $12 million. Overnight, Zenith Technologies went from a garage startup to a company that mattered. Investors started calling. The media took notice. Marcus and David found themselves on the cover of tech magazines, hailed as the next generation of Silicon Valley innovators. But success has a way of revealing who people really are. As the company grew, so did the distance between the two founders. Marcus wanted to expand aggressively, to take risks that could either make them billionaires or destroy everything they'd built. David became cautious, preferring steady growth over bold moves. Their arguments grew heated, their friendship strained under the weight of their differing visions. By 2014, Zenith Technologies was valued at $800 million. They had offices in 6 countries and over 3,000 employees. Marcus served as CEO, with David as Chief Technology Officer. To the outside world, they were still the dynamic duo. But behind closed doors, their relationship had become toxic. That's when the board of directors entered the picture. Venture capitalists now owned 60% of the company, and they had their own ideas about how Zenith should be run. Marcus fought to maintain control, to preserve the company's culture and his vision for its future. But David had been having conversations with the board, conversations Marcus knew nothing about. It happened on a cold Tuesday morning in November. Marcus arrived at the office to find security waiting for him. His key card no longer worked. His assistant looked at him with tears in her eyes, but wouldn't meet his gaze. He was escorted to the boardroom, where he found David sitting at the head of the table, surrounded by the board members. The chairman spoke first. "Marcus, we appreciate everything you've done for Zenith, but the board has decided it's time for new leadership. Effective immediately, David will assume the role of CEO. You're being offered a settlement package and the option to remain as a strategic advisor." Marcus felt the room spin. He looked at David, his best friend, the man who had been his best man at his wedding, the godfather to his daughter. "David, you knew about this." David couldn't meet his eyes. "It's what's best for the company, Marcus. You become too unpredictable, too risky. The board has lost confidence in your leadership." What Marcus didn't know was that David had spent 6 months carefully orchestrating this coup. He'd held private meetings with board members, sharing concerns about Marcus's aggressive expansion plans and his mounting personal problems. Marcus's recent divorce had made him volatile, David argued, and the company needed stable leadership. He'd positioned himself as the safe choice, the steady hand that would protect the investors' money. The truth was more complicated. David had always lived in Marcus's shadow. While Marcus got the magazine covers and the keynote speeches, David was the one doing the real work. Resentment had been building for years, and when venture capitalists started whispering that David would make a better CEO, his ambition finally overcame his loyalty. Marcus refused the settlement. Instead, he sold his remaining shares, taking a payout of $300 million. He was wealthy beyond his dreams, but he'd lost the company he'd built from nothing. He'd lost his purpose, and he'd lost his best friend. For 6 months, Marcus spiraled. He spent his days in his penthouse apartment, watching from afar as David ran Zenith. The tech blogs praised David's cautious approach. The stock price stabilized. Investors were happy. Everything Marcus had warned against, everything he'd fought for, seemed to have been wrong. But Marcus couldn't let go. Late at night, he'd analyze Zenith's quarterly reports, study their product releases, track their market position. And, slowly, he began to see something that no one else noticed. David was playing it safe, yes, but he was also letting Zenith stagnate. Competitors were innovating, taking the risks that Marcus would have taken. Zenith was losing its edge. More importantly, Marcus saw an opportunity. A gap in the market that Zenith, under David's conservative leadership, would never pursue. It was risky, possibly insane, but it was exactly the kind of bet Marcus lived for. He started making phone calls. Marcus assembled a team of engineers, many of them former Zenith employees who had been frustrated by David's risk-averse approach. He rented a small office space, deliberately choosing a building across the street from Zenith's headquarters. And he started building again. The new company was called Phoenix Solutions, and its mission was everything Zenith had once stood for before David had neutered it. Marcus poured $100 million of his own money into the venture. This time, he owned 80% of the company outright. No board to answer to. No partners to betray him. Phoenix's product was revolutionary. An AI-powered cloud infrastructure that could predict and prevent system failures before they happened. It was the kind of ambitious moonshot that David would have called reckless. But Marcus had learned from his mistakes. He hired better, built smarter, and moved faster than he ever had at Zenith. David heard about Phoenix, of course. At first, he dismissed it as Marcus's ego project, a vanity startup funded by bitterness. But then Phoenix started winning clients, including several who left Zenith to make the switch. David tried to laugh it off in interviews, but privately, he was worried. 18 months after his betrayal, Marcus did something that shocked everyone. Phoenix announced a revolutionary partnership with 3 of the world's largest tech companies. Together, they would build the next generation of cloud infrastructure, with Phoenix's technology at its core. The deal valued Phoenix at $3 billion, making it worth more than Zenith had ever been under Marcus's leadership. But Marcus wasn't done. He'd been quietly buying Zenith stock, using shell companies and offshore accounts to hide his purchases. By the time David realized what was happening, Marcus controlled 15% of the company. Combined with shares held by institutional investors who were increasingly unhappy with Zenith's stagnant growth, Marcus had the leverage he needed. The proxy battle was vicious. Marcus went public with his campaign to retake control of Zenith, arguing that the company had lost its way under David's leadership. He presented data showing how Zenith's market share had eroded, how their best engineers had left for competitors, how the company that had once been an innovator had become just another boring enterprise software provider. David fought back, accusing Marcus of being driven by revenge rather than business sense. He pointed to Zenith's stable profits, its satisfied enterprise clients, its lack of risky bets that could endanger the company. But the narrative had shifted. The same board members who had once praised David's caution now saw it as a liability. The vote came down to a single institutional investor who controlled 8% of the company. Marcus met with them personally, making his case not for revenge, but for vision. He didn't want to destroy Zenith, he explained. He wanted to merge it with Phoenix, to create a company that combined Zenith's enterprise relationships with Phoenix's cutting-edge technology. Together, they could dominate the market in a way that neither could alone. The investor sided with Marcus. David was removed as CEO, and Marcus returned to lead the merged company, now called Zenith Phoenix. But here's where the story takes its final, unexpected turn. Marcus could have humiliated David, could have forced him out entirely. Instead, he offered him a position as Chief Operating Officer. Not out of friendship, they both knew that was dead, but because Marcus had learned something crucial during his time away. He needed someone like David. Someone to balance his ambition with caution, his vision with execution. They would never be friends again, but they could be partners. David accepted. He had no choice, really, but in the months that followed, something unexpected happened. Working together again, without the baggage of friendship and with clear boundaries around their roles, they found a rhythm. Marcus would dream big. David would figure out how to make those dreams sustainable. The tension between them became productive rather than destructive. 3 years later, Zenith Phoenix went public at a valuation of $42 billion. Marcus remained CEO, but he gave David credit publicly for the company's operational excellence. In interviews, they spoke about their falling out with surprising candor. Marcus admitted he'd been arrogant and reckless in the early days. David acknowledged that his betrayal, while perhaps necessary for the company at the time, had been personally devastating and handled poorly. But here's the truth that Marcus eventually understood. The betrayal had been the best thing that ever happened to him. Being forced out of Zenith had broken him, yes, but it had also freed him. It forced him to evolve, to learn, to build something even greater. The pain of betrayal had become the fuel for an even bigger success. David, too, had learned hard lessons. His cautious approach had saved Zenith in the short term, but nearly killed it in the long term. His betrayal of Marcus had earned him a CEO title, but it had also revealed his limitations as a leader. He was a brilliant executor, but he wasn't a visionary, and trying to be something he wasn't had nearly destroyed everything. Today, Zenith Phoenix is one of the most valuable technology companies in the world. Marcus and David still work together, though they're not friends. They don't socialize outside of work, don't share the easy camaraderie they once had. But they respect each other's strengths and understand their own weaknesses. The betrayal killed their friendship, but it forged something perhaps more valuable. A true partnership based on complementary skills rather than personal affection. Sometimes, the worst thing that happens to us becomes the catalyst for our greatest achievements. Sometimes, the people who betray us teach us the most important lessons. And sometimes, success isn't about avoiding failure or betrayal. It's about how we respond when those inevitable moments arrive. Marcus Chun built a company, lost it to betrayal, and built an even greater empire from the ashes. His story reminds us that setbacks are not endings. They're chapters in a much longer story. The question isn't whether we'll face betrayal or failure. It's whether we'll let those experiences destroy us or forge us into something stronger. If you enjoyed this story of betrayal, resilience, and ultimate triumph, please subscribe to our channel for more content like this. Hit that like button, drop a comment telling us what you think, and click the notification bell so you never miss our next video. We bring you the most compelling stories of business, ambition, and the human spirit. Thanks for watching, and remember, your greatest comeback might be waiting on the other side of your worst defeat.